This is Catholic Forum. I'm Bob Krebs, coming to you today from my home studio. It's actually my dining room, but today it's my home studio. You know, many people might admire a renowned surgeon or a high ranking military official or a member of a religious community like a sister or a nun. But Sister Deirdre Byrne is all three. She is way off of the admiration chart. Dr. Lisa Marie Carzone is currently an assistant professor of education and university graduate program director. She's the president of Plymouth Right to Life, president and chairman of the board of the Heart of Christ Medical Clinic, president and CEO of the St. Thomas Aquinas Educational Fund for Religious, and a national executive with Right for America. Her new book is titled Sister Soldier Surgeon: The Life and Courage of Sister Deirdre Byrne, MD. I'd like to welcome to Catholic Forum Dr. Lisa Marie Carzone. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today, Lisa.
Well, thank you. So blessed to be with you today. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. And we're going to talk about Sister Deirdre Byrne. It's an incredible story. It's a great book. Before we do, let's get to know you a little bit first. Tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would, please.
Well, thank you for that introduction. I'm so blessed to be here and talking about the incredible life of Sister Deirdre Byrne. So I will say I was blessed to shadow her, and that first came about when I was trying to impact the 2020 elections. I was a state director for Catholic Vote at that time as a side role to my assistant professorship at a university in Michigan, where I run the Catholic School Leadership Program. And it was then that I first met Sister after her 2020 RNC appearance and asked to shadow her for the purposes of writing the book. Mm-hmm. So I continue now in my role in trying to advance beauty, truth, and goodness in Catholic healthcare as well as Catholic education.
So tell us about Sister Deirdre. If suppose we've never heard of her before, where do we start? Tell us her story, if you would, please.
This threefold role, Bob, is just incredible. As the title indicates, she is a U.S. Army colonel, so as well as a surgeon and a Catholic sister, soldier, surgeon. While not many folks could claim those three roles, she marries these three things together so beautifully. And in the book, in section 1, you'll get to read about how she came to discern each of those paths that God unfolded for her. She then, in section 2, you get to read about how a week in the life of Sister Deirdre Byrne manifests among her patients, how she reversed 3 chemical abortions, and then in section 3, the way Sister Deirdre permeates culture with the truth of Christ. So our call to the public square, our call to engage, as the apostles did, to come out of the upper room from beyond prayer and permeate the culture, to be leaven for transformation in this society. So when she was just a young gal, her mother, who, by the way, is almost 102 years old now and lives with Sister in the convent where Sister cares for her, her mother used to say Sister had in utero a vocation. She felt something special. And in fact, when Sister was just a young girl, she would leaf through the missionary magazines that came to the house and really connected with the photos there. She wanted very much to be a sister like the ones in the photos she saw. So very, very young, a calling to the religious life. But that wasn't her first role. In fact, she didn't become a sister until into her 40s. What happened next was she went to college, having watched her father as a cardiothoracic surgeon for so many years. The influence of being a physician was also a strong call on her heart. She used to joke that when she'd go to the refrigerator, she'd open the door, and once she saw on the shelf next to the eggs a human heart in a jar. So the more unusual things about being in a family with a dad who was a cardiothoracic surgeon sort of intrigued her and made her have a passion for medicine. So she went to medical school and wanted to relieve her parents of the financial burden of medical school. So at the same time, joined the Army on a scholarship to help pay for her medical school. So that first calling actually to merge the U.S. Army with her medical school training then paved the way for her subsequent vocation.
That's interesting. So I guess that's not unusual for someone who wants to become a medical doctor and the expenses, and to actually go and join the service to help pay for that. But then when did her religious calling come into play? Was she still in the military, or what? When did that happen?
Yes. Oh my gosh. And it's such an exciting story. You're going to see when you read these stories, every one of them is a fun, exciting, and she has a great sense of humor. So you're going to read a lot of very humorous things in there as well. But yes, in fact, she was a sister and a U.S. Army colonel at the same time. At one point, these roles overlapped. Her discernment as a sister really came via the influence of four people. Number one, Sister Philip Marie Burley, who was very, very influential in the young Dee Dee's life. Sister Burley would travel the world giving retreats on the Holy Spirit and influenced the young Dee Dee before she became a sister. The second person that was influential in helping Sister discern her vocation was Cardinal Hickey.
Wow.
So when Sister was the surgeon assistant on call at Walter Reed in DC area, she was blessed to be able to care for Cardinal Hickey, who came in with crushing chest pain. Sister was able to literally hold Cardinal Hickey's heart in her hand during the surgery and then tended to him post-surgery in ICU for 5 days. After this, when Cardinal recovered, he ended up becoming a friend and a spiritual mentor for Sister, very influential in her life. The next person was Mother Teresa. Sister Dee Dee got to be Mother Teresa's personal physician for a week when she came to DC, and Mother was in town to receive the Congressional Medal of Honor at that time. Ever since Sister was a very young girl, Mother Teresa was very influential in her life. So this meeting of Mother all those years later, being able to tend to her, was very, very transformative. And the final person who influenced her vocation was Father John Hardin. At that time, Sister Dee Dee was really trying to find a religious order that would allow her to continue practicing her medicine. She was having a difficult time finding one. Many of the orders that she investigated were maybe not necessarily doing things in line with church teaching. Some religious orders distributing, in the medical field, distributing contraceptives, for example. She knew she couldn't do that. So she decided to approach Mother Teresa with the idea of potentially starting a medical branch of the Missionaries of Charity. When she did, Mother Teresa said no, that Missionaries of Charity were not called to do that. And so Sister, very discouraged, went to Father Hardin and said, Father, maybe I'll just give up the idea of being a Catholic, a medical physician, and just give my life to Christ as a missionary of charity in the religious life. And Father Hardin said, no, we need good Catholic doctors. You are called to be a Catholic physician, but you will not enter the religious order of the Missionaries of Charity. Keep looking. And so that finally closed the door in a way that allowed Sister to find the Little Workers of the Sacred Heart years later. So finally, when she met the Little Workers of the Sacred Hearts, where she could then marry her religious vocation with medicine, she knew she had found her fit. And so to this day, Sister ministers not only by serving the poorest of the poor in DC at Catholic Charities Medical Clinic, but also in her convent clinic, where she, in the basement of the convent, sees patients. It's an incredible, incredible merging of these roles.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something like that to me is like just beyond beyond my imagination. So you came to know her through your connection in politics. And,
Yes.
and then so how did the book come about?
It's a really fun story, Bob. When I first saw her, like most folks, I didn't know who she was. I had never
Yeah.
seen her before. I first saw her on the RNC stage in 2020 when she held her rosary up for the entire nation to see, declared herself to be pro-life from the moment of conception. And I just literally cheered in my living room. I wanted to know who this woman was who so courageously defended life in the public square. We've been crying out for religious leaders, habited religious leaders, willing to be a strong voice for the voiceless. And she took her place on that national stage to do so. I looked her name up, tried to read about who was this woman. I rewound what I was watching, found her name, called her cold in DC, and just wanted to thank her for what she did. At that time, I was heavily involved in politics, trying to move the pro-life vote at that time. Asked her if she'd do a national a virtual event for me at that time. COVID was in full swing, which she did. And then I asked her for permission to shadow her for writing a book. Her response to me was, "You must be writing a comic book." And then she begged me to wait until she was dead. I said, "Sister, I'm sorry, we can't wait until you're dead. Our children, our grandchildren, our nation, our church needs your guidance, your voice more now than ever before." So it was an incredible 4 years shadowing her. And in section 2, particularly, Bob, the stories of the abortion reversals that she did in 1 week's time, she reversed 3 chemical abortions. Wow. And I tell the stories of those beautiful women who she accompanied and loved through that process, through that difficult process. It's really incredible what she does.
Does she have a group of sisters that help her and her clinic there in DC?
There are always some sisters there. Now, the Little Workers of the Sacred Hearts are worldwide, but yes, in her clinic in DC, there are at various points in time, one sister who was just reassigned to Rome was there as her nurse. And on days where they go to the Planned Parenthood clinic to pray, when the women leave the clinic, the sisters walk up, and sister says, "I'm not only a sister, but I'm also a physician. If you just took the RU486 pill, I'm asking you to consider the life of your child. Your abortion can be reversed within 72 hours. You know, you can visit me at my clinic, etc." And so, yes, these sisters, in particular, Sister Dee, who now has an ultrasound machine in the basement of her clinic, then sees these women after they have started the abortion reversal process, and then helps them through. Even a year later, there are still women being helped by these beautiful sisters in DC because they really take that accompaniment seriously.
Mm-hmm. You can see where she got the moniker Mother Teresa of DC because she's doing such wonderful work. What is your theory of why we don't know Sister Dee? Why isn't she a household word?
Well, the purpose of this book, Bob, is that she will become a household word. I am convinced that her inspirational life will inspire to both virtue and action. Not only our young girls who are discerning a potential religious calling, and I'm with her all the time when there are girls from Australia visiting, discerning a vocation. One high school girl who was shadowing her, who wanted to be both a physician and a sister, was shadowing her one time when I was there. So not only can she be an inspiration to young folks, and in particular young women, because I believe firmly she exemplifies the feminine genius better than anybody I've ever met. The true, authentic fulfillment of what it means to live your vocation as a caretaker, as a woman, as a nurturer, as a spiritual mother. She does this so beautifully. So the hope is this book will help folks know what it means to live a life of virtue, but also to live their faith in the public square as she does. Mindful that faith is always personal and private, but it is not just personal and private. And if it fails to inform every dimension of our lives, it's not true faith at all. So Sister Dee also shows us what it means to talk about your faith publicly, to never be afraid to evangelize, to vote in line with church teaching. So this is the way we can transform culture. So I believe she exemplifies that. And now her word is and messages are getting out there as she travels the nation, even the world, helping folks learn what it means to be in the state of grace so that we can eventually reach heaven.
We've touched on her religious vocation. We talked about her surgeon part of her life. We really haven't talked much about her military career. Tell us a little bit about that, if you would, please.
Really exciting stories. And I have to tell you, every time I called somebody for an interview asking, could you share stories about Sister's time in the military? They were never just little stories. They were always transformative stories. That's what struck me about the interviews when I called folks. For example, she ministered in all over the world, but in Afghanistan in particular, there were only 5 priests to minister in all that area of Afghanistan. And so she didn't have the opportunity to go to Holy Mass every day as she really wanted to. So she started holding prayer services on a daily basis. She started with just 3 of her friends. They would read the Bible, say the chaplet, pray the rosary. By the end of her stay in Afghanistan, where, by the way, she was literally piecing back together our nation's heroes as a surgeon, but during this time, over 100 people started coming to the prayer services, many of them non-Catholics, some even non-Christians, and were converting to Catholicism because of these prayer services and her influence. I was blessed to be able to see it. There were some letters in a scrapbook that many of the military men, and most of them men, she was the only female officer in a sea of many, many men in the Sinai Peninsula, for example. So the influence of this young woman in the lives of all these men and some women as well. But the letters were transformational. I recount some of them in the book, but men thanking her. Thank you for not only the medical care you provided me, but for making me a better man and for making me a better Catholic. I'll never forget your influence in my spiritual life. So transformative effects in the military. There were also some really heart-wrenching stories when she ministered in the Nuba Mountains, for example. There were slicing and dicing of patients by the bombs that were being, coming on these people. She would literally have to tend to patients whose limbs might be coming in on one stretcher while their bodies were coming in on another stretcher. So you get to read about the Muslim man, for example, that she ministered to as he was undergoing anesthesia, and she was ministering to him, and he said, "Sister, will you please pray with me?" And other non-Christian physicians there who would say, "There's something different about you. What is it? What is it?" And at that point, she would be able to share with them the reason for the hope within her, Jesus Christ. And so while she was tending to patients in hospitals and on the battlefields and even to the monks at St. Catherine's Monastery in the Sinai Peninsula and Bedouins in the area, she was also ministering in a spiritual capacity as well. She used to take some of the few women that were in the Sinai Peninsula with her, she would take on Sunday afternoons, they'd go to the Red Sea, and they'd have what she called the Sunshine Club. She'd use it as an opportunity to help women understand their authentic role in the church, or their dignity as a woman, their dignity as a daughter of the King, so that they would understand that they were called to preserve their purity, that they would understand where true freedom lies, and that is in responding to the call of God to be in the state of grace. So she was almost giving a theology of the body long before there was a theology of the body at that time. So many, many stories that you'll get to read about from her military experience. Oh, and she ministered at 9/11, as you'll see in the book as well. It was really incredible.
Wow, that's amazing. The book is titled Sister Soldier Surgeon, The Life and Courage of Sister Deirdre Byrne, MD. Lisa, what do you want your readers to take away from this story, from this book?
I want them to take away a call to virtue and a call to action. We are called to for heaven. We are made for heaven. So a call to be in the state of grace, but also to that this is the answer. To take that faith into the public square is how we will reclaim the nation. The other thing is, I'd love for folks to take away, while we will never be called to be a sister, a soldier, and a surgeon, many of us, we are called to her more important role in life, and that is the way she loves. So I say, what makes her so special is not those threefold callings that she so beautifully marries together, but to love well, to love others well, to accompany hurting people. So this call to be a better Catholic, a better Christian, is what I hope folks will take away, so that we will all realize our eternal ends and eternal heaven.
Well, thank God that you didn't wait until Sister died to write this book. It's great that you twisted her arm and convinced her to let you do this. Once again, the book is titled Sister, Soldier, Surgeon, The Life and Courage of Sister Deirdre Byrne, MD. It's available from Sophia Institute Press, which is sophiainstitute.com. Also, I would think through other online booksellers and your Catholic bookstores.
Yes, Bob, thank you. If you visit sistersoldiersurgeon.com, sistersoldiersurgeon.com, you'll find a link there to order the book, and you'll also be able to see lots of really fun photos of sisters at various stages of her life.
That's great. Dr. Lisa Marie Carzone, thanks so much for spending time with us today on Catholic Forum.
Thank you. God bless you.